She walked in like she owned the place. Because she did. It was a cool Monday morning. Glass doors polished. The marble floors inside shining like always. The building looked like a fortress of power, a place where serious money moved every hour. And she, dressed in a sharp black suit, walked straight up to the entrance with the kind of calm confidence you only get from owning something. Something big. No one noticed anything odd at first. A few employees standing near the lobby just glanced her way. A security guard gave a polite nod. But then came the moment that would shift everything. As she stepped forward, a young man, maybe mid-30s, new in his job, blocked her path. "Excuse me, ma'am. Can I help you?" he asked, with that forced customer service smile. She blinked, surprised. "No, thank you," she said softly. "I'm heading to the executive floor." He frowned. "Sorry, but I'm not allowed to let anyone pass this point without proper clearance. Are you a client? Or do you have an appointment with someone?" She paused, tilted her head. "I'm here to work. I don't need an appointment." Now more eyes were turning. The bank lobby had gone quiet. Just a faint clicking of heels and the hum of overhead lights. The young man's face tightened a bit. Maybe it was discomfort. Maybe it was something else. "I'm going to need to see some ID," he said, a little firmer this time. "Or I'll have to ask you to wait outside." There it was. The line. The moment a person thinks they have power over someone else and decides to use it. She stood there, not angry, not yelling, just still, calm in a way that made people nervous. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was low but direct. "I built this bank. My name is on the foundation papers. My money runs through every floor of this building. And my face is supposed to be on that wall behind you." She pointed past him, where the portraits of board members and executives were hung in gold frames. But he didn't look. He didn't even blink. Instead, he took a breath and said the one sentence that would change his day. "Ma'am, I'm asking you to leave the premises." And that's when everything around her changed. The receptionist at the desk looked up sharply. One of the tellers, who'd been walking past, stopped cold and turned back. A security camera above the lobby caught every frame. Even the guard at the front door shifted uncomfortably, like he suddenly realized what was about to go wrong. She didn't make a scene. She didn't raise her voice. She simply pulled out her phone. It took 30 seconds. Maybe less. She opened one app, typed one word, hit send. And across town, in the heart of the legal district, a boardroom full of executives stood up. Her legal team already knew the drill. They'd been prepared for something like this, even though no one expected it so soon. A call was made. A document was pulled. A code was activated. Back at the bank, her phone buzzed once. She smiled. Then she took one step forward. The same young man who had just blocked her path stepped back, uncertain now. "You're about to witness something you'll never forget," she said to him, her voice almost kind. "So I suggest you stand aside." Behind her, the double doors opened again. Only this time, it wasn't a customer entering. It was the new head of internal security, flanked by 2 assistants and a manager holding a folder of urgent papers. He walked up, nodded to her, and looked the young man dead in the eye. "This is the CO," he said. "The founder, the woman who signs your paycheck. And as of this moment, she has full operational control of this facility." Dead silence. The young man didn't move. He couldn't. She walked past him, slowly, as if nothing had happened, as if it was just another Monday. But for everyone watching, nothing would ever feel normal in that building again. The elevator doors closed behind her with a quiet ding, sealing off the chaos she had just walked through. But even behind those steel doors, the tension stayed. She adjusted the cuff of her sleeve, took a deep breath, and stared straight ahead. Calm face, still eyes. But inside her mind, a storm had already begun to build. This wasn't just a disrespectful employee. This wasn't just a mistake. This was something deeper. As the numbers above the elevator ticked up floor by floor, her thoughts wandered back to the beginning. Not of the day, but of the bank. 10 years ago, this place didn't even exist. Just an empty lot and a big dream. She remembered sitting in a tiny office above a laundromat, sketching business plans on notebook paper while noise from the dryers thudded through the walls. Investors told her it was impossible. Friends warned her to start small, but she didn't listen. She had a vision, to build a bank not just for profit, but for people like her, people the big banks overlooked, people who were told no too many times. She poured everything into it, sold her apartment, moved into a rented room, worked day and night with no holidays, no weekends, built a team from scratch, learned the laws, navigated the bureaucracy. And when the doors finally opened to this building 3 years ago, it felt like victory. Her name wasn't just on the paperwork. It was etched into the culture of the company. And now she was being mistaken for a trespasser in the very halls she had created. The elevator reached the top floor. The doors opened with a soft chime. She stepped into the executive lobby, where everything was glass, steel, and silence. The air smelled faintly of leather and fresh polish. Paintings hung on the walls, modern, expensive, meant to impress. She walked past the assistant's desk, which was suddenly empty, and opened the door to the main boardroom. Inside, half the leadership team was already waiting. Suits and silence. Every chair pulled out neatly, every face slightly unsure what to expect. She didn't sit. Not yet. She placed her phone down on the table. "Let me make this perfectly clear," she began, her voice level and smooth. "This is not about hurt feelings. This is not about some young man who made a mistake. This is about a culture problem, a visibility problem, and a respect problem." Someone at the table cleared their throat, shifting uncomfortably. She looked directly at him. "When your founder, the woman who brought this company from a backroom idea to a financial institution, can walk into her own building and be treated like a threat, something is deeply broken." The room stayed quiet. No one tried to interrupt. She walked to the head of the table. Slowly, deliberately. Then she sat down, finally, and opened the folder she had brought. Inside, new policies, new leadership plans, internal restructuring, but most importantly, education. "Starting today," she said, her tone sharp but composed, "every employee will be required to take part in a new corporate training program. Not just about diversity, not just about respect, but about remembering who we are and why this bank exists." She let that hang in the air. "I don't want apologies. I want accountability. I want every person in this company to understand that titles mean nothing without values. And if someone can't live those values, they don't belong here." Across the room, a few heads nodded slowly. Some looked down. Some, even now, avoided her eyes. That told her everything she needed to know. She stood up again and walked toward the window. The city stretched below, cars, people, tall towers made of concrete and ambition. Somewhere down there, the employee who had stopped her was probably still trying to process what had happened. She didn't feel anger toward him. Not really. What she felt was resolve. She was going to fix what had been lost, not just for herself, but for every young black woman who dreamed of boardrooms and balance sheets, for every entrepreneur told they were too loud, too bold, too different. She was going to remind this company who built it and why it still matters. She didn't waste time after that meeting. The message had been sent, but she knew how corporations worked. Words fade fast if actions don't follow. By noon, her assistant had already arranged a follow-up meeting with the department heads. No delays, no excuses. Everyone would be in that room, whether they were ready or not. While the team was being gathered, she returned to her private office. It sat at the corner of the top floor, all glass walls and sweeping city views. But she didn't look outside. She stood in front of a tall bookshelf, her fingers grazing the spines of old business books and binders filled with notes from the early days. In the center sat a framed photo, her younger self, holding a hard hat, standing in front of this very building before it was even finished. No walls, no ceiling, just her, some blueprints, and a dream no one else really believed in. She had built this, not with shortcuts, not through favors, but through fire. Every document signed, every investor convinced, every challenge faced. She had done it all. And now, someone who probably hadn't even read the company history had tried to deny her access to her own legacy. She picked up the photo and held it for a moment, then placed it on her desk, front and center. The door opened behind her. "They're ready," her assistant said softly. She nodded once and walked out without a word. The conference room downstairs buzzed with nervous energy. Department heads, branch managers, legal advisors. They were all there. Most of them had heard the story by now. Some had seen the security footage. Some were whispering about it in private chats before the meeting even started. But now they had to face her. She entered the room, calm as ever, carrying nothing but a notepad and a pen. No slideshow, no printed agenda, just her voice. "I'm not here to retell what happened this morning," she began, standing at the front of the room. "Most of you already know. And if you don't, I assume by now you've heard enough versions of it." Silence. "What I want to talk about today is culture, not the one we write in our employee handbooks. The real one, the kind that shows up in how we treat people who don't wear suits every day, the kind that reveals itself when no one's watching, the kind that decides in an instant who gets respect and who gets questioned." She paused, scanning the room. "I want to know how that kind of mistake could happen. I want to know what we've allowed to grow in our hallways, in our training programs, in our hiring processes. And I want to know what each of you is going to do about it." Some managers shifted uncomfortably. A few avoided her gaze. But one of them, a woman from HR, raised her hand slowly. "I'll speak honestly," she said. "There's been tension for a while. Unspoken, but it's there. New hires coming with unconscious biases. Some of our managers aren't addressing it because they don't see it as a priority. We focus so much on numbers and performance that we forgot people need to feel seen, respected." That wasn't an easy thing to say. The CEO knew that, but it was a kind of honesty she needed. "Thank you," she replied. "That's exactly the kind of truth we're going to need every single day from now on." She turned back to the others. "This is a wake-up call. We are not just a bank. We're not just a brand. We are a statement. When I founded this company, it wasn't just to provide loans. It was to change the way banking treats people who look like me. And if we've lost sight of that, then we've lost everything." She handed out sheets of paper. On them were 3 questions. 1. Where is bias hiding in your department? 2. What change can you make this week? 3. What have you personally ignored? "I want these filled out by the end of the day," she said. "And I want to read them all myself." No one said a word. No one argued. They just nodded because, in that moment, they understood something had shifted. This wasn't just about protocol. It was personal. And from now on, business as usual wouldn't cut it anymore. Down in the lobby, whispers had already turned into full-blown rumors. Employees on their lunch breaks huddled near windows and elevators, trading stories that twisted and stretched with every telling. Some claimed she had fired half the staff already. Others said the entire building had been locked down. But none of them really knew. They hadn't seen her face when that security guard asked her to leave. They didn't feel the chill that came with her silence. Back upstairs, she sat alone in her office again. Her desk was piled with papers now, most of them the responses from managers. Some were thoughtful, some rushed, and some just tried to check a box. She read every word. Every answer told a story, not just about how departments were run, but about the people running them. One manager claimed there was no bias in his team. She paused at that one. Bold claim. She highlighted the sentence and made a note in the margin. Schedule surprise audit. Another wrote about a branch employee who always interrupted women in meetings. No one had ever called it out, but it was known. She underlined that one too. What stood out most, though, was how many people mentioned fear. Fear of speaking up. Fear of being labeled difficult. Fear of saying the wrong thing. That told her everything she needed to know. If people were afraid of honesty, then leadership had failed. Plain and simple, her phone buzzed. A message from her executive assistant. Asterisk, media request came in. Local business journal wants a statement on the incident. What should I tell them? Asterisk, she stared at the message for a moment. The easy answer was to decline. No comment. Keep it in-house. But something told her this wasn't just an internal issue anymore. What happened to her wasn't rare. It wasn't even new. It just happened to the wrong person, the one with the power to do something about it. She typed back, "Tell them we'll release a public statement tomorrow. And tell legal I want approved by me, not filtered." She stood and walked over to the window again. The city below carried on like nothing had happened. Taxis rolled past. People crossed streets with coffee in hand. But inside this tower, everything had changed, and it was just getting started. An alert blinked on her desktop. Another email, this one from the regional manager of operations. She opened it and read the first line. Asterisk, "I'd like to personally apologize for what happened this morning. I take full responsibility for the failure in training and awareness on my team's part." Asterisk. She kept reading. It wasn't just an apology. It was an offer, a proposal for a new internal mentorship program, focused on uplifting underrepresented staff into leadership roles. Training sessions led by outside experts. A rotating feedback system where employees could speak freely without fearing backlash. This was good. A start. She made a note to meet with him, not just to thank him, but to see if his actions matched his words. Then came a knock. The young man from the lobby stood at her door, not with security, not under orders, just alone. He looked nervous, holding his employee badge in his hand. He didn't speak right away. "I just wanted to say," he started, his voice low, "I didn't know who you were, and I didn't mean to offend you. I was just doing my job. But I've been thinking about it since it happened, and I realized that's the problem." She watched him carefully. There was no script in his tone, no performance, just a quiet kind of discomfort that sounded a lot like growth. "I judged you the second I saw you," he continued. "I assumed. I've been working here 6 months, and I never once asked who built this place, who made it possible for people like me to even work here." She didn't interrupt. She let him talk. "I want to do better, and if you're willing, I'd like to learn." For the first time that day, her shoulders relaxed just slightly, not because everything had been fixed or forgotten, but because the very thing she had hoped to awaken, awareness, ownership, real accountability, was starting to flicker into life, right in front of her. She didn't let him off the hook with a smile. She simply nodded once and gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Sit," she said, not harsh, not soft either, just firm, like a door swinging open, but not all the way. He sat, badge still clutched in his hand, shoulders a little too straight, trying not to fidget. His eyes didn't meet hers right away. She could tell he wasn't used to being in this office. Probably never imagined he'd be sitting across from the CEO under these circumstances. But she didn't want fear. She wanted clarity. "What's your name?" she asked. "Jared," he answered quickly. "Jared Lawson." She nodded again. "And what's your position?" "Lobby operations. Customer security detail." She leaned forward slightly. "And what is your responsibility when someone walks through front doors?" "To make sure visitors are identified, that no unauthorized people enter restricted areas, and provide support if there's any concern." "Right," she said. "So when I walked in, what made you think I was unauthorized?" He hesitated. "That's not a trick question, Jared," she said, her voice calm. "I want to understand what went through your mind. Be honest." He looked down at the floor. "You didn't look like the people I usually see going up to the executive floors," he admitted. "You weren't announced. I didn't recognize you. And, she pressed gently, I assumed you were a client. Or maybe someone trying to make a complaint. That's usually who walks in without an appointment." She folded her hands. "And what made you think a client or a complainant couldn't be a black woman in a suit, walking like she knows exactly where she's going?" He swallowed. "That's what I've been asking myself all day." The silence after that was heavy, but not cruel. She let it sit there like a weight, because sometimes discomfort is where real change begins. "You see, Jared," she said after a moment, "this isn't just about one incident. This is about what's been trained into all of us, who we expect to see in power, who we think belongs where, and what assumptions we carry without even noticing." He nodded slowly, the truth of it clearly landing. "I appreciate you coming to me," she continued. Most people would have just avoided this conversation, hoped it would blow over. I didn't want that, he said. I've seen other places where people stay quiet and nothing changes. I don't want to be that person. She finally gave him the first small sign of approval, a slight lift at the corner of her mouth. Then let's make sure you're not. You'll be attending the leadership culture sessions I'm designing, and I want you to be involved in helping draft a new front desk protocol. It's not just a training issue, it's a vision issue, and you're now part of the fix. His eyes widened, surprised. Really? Really? This isn't about punishment. It's about transformation, and that takes participation. You have a chance to lead by example, not by title, but by awareness. He stood up slowly, badge back at his side now, posture a little more relaxed. Thank you, he said, for not shutting me out. She gave a nod. Keep your eyes open. Stay curious. And if you ever doubt what someone's role is, ask. Don't assume. He left quietly, and the door clicked softly behind him. She leaned back in her chair. Outside the office, the building buzzed on. Phones rang. Elevators moved. Deals were signed. But inside her office, it felt like a shift had just taken place. Not loud, not explosive, but solid, like a gear clicking into place after being jammed for too long. Moments later, her assistant entered again, holding a fresh folder. Board members are on standby. They want to meet today. Let them wait 15 minutes, she said, standing. I want to walk the floor first. She didn't wait for a response, because now she wasn't just running a bank. She was leading a movement, and it started one hallway at a time. She didn't take the executive elevator this time. Instead, she chose a long way, down the main stairs, past every floor where real work happened, past rows of cubicles, private offices, break rooms filled with leftover muffins and lukewarm coffee. People looked up as she passed, surprised. The CEO, here, walking past accounting, checking in on marketing. Her heels moved with steady rhythm, each step more deliberate than the last. She wasn't here for show. She wanted to see the place with her own eyes, not from spreadsheets or filtered reports, but from inside. She wanted to hear the tone of conversations, feel the energy in the air, read the body language that numbers never capture. On the third floor, she paused. It was the customer service department. She stepped inside the open floor area. A few agents were on headsets. Others were typing fast, shoulders tense, eyes tired. This was the floor that took the brunt of everything. The angry calls, the policy complaints, the confusion, the pressure. One young woman saw her and stood up so quickly her headset flew off. "Ms. Walker," she said, clearly startled. Do you need something?" She smiled lightly. "I'm just visiting." People froze. Some looked at their screens a little too intently. Others avoided eye contact. The tension was thick, like no one knew if this was a test or a trap. "Relax," she said, walking over to a group near the middle of the room. "I'm not here to fire anyone." A few nervous laughs scattered the floor. "I came because I want to understand how this place really feels," she continued. "Not just what's in the reports." Now, they were listening. "What's working here?" she asked. "What's not? What slows you down? What lifts you up?" No one answered at first. Then, slowly, a man raised his hand. His badge read Terrence. "The ticketing system," he said. "It's outdated. We get so many customer cases bouncing back. Clients get frustrated, and so do we." Another hand went up. "The scripts? We're told to follow them word for word, but sometimes it makes us sound like robots. It doesn't feel human." One by one, the voices came. Respectful, but honest. They weren't trying to complain. They were relieved to be heard. She listened without interrupting, jotting notes quietly in a small leather notebook. Then one voice from the back of the room said something that caught her attention. "It feels like no one knows we're here until something goes wrong." Heads nodded. That sentence hit her deeper than she let on. That was the root of the problem. It wasn't just the disrespect in the lobby. It wasn't just policy issues or outdated systems. It was a slow erosion of visibility, the invisible labor, the unacknowledged effort. The idea that unless you're in a corner office or wearing a title, you don't count. She closed her notebook and nodded once. I appreciate every one of you, she said. What you said today, it matters, and it's going to change how we do things around here. She turned to leave but paused at the door. Starting next week, I want monthly roundtables, one per department. No managers, just voices, real conversations. You won't need permission to speak. You already have it. And then she left. Back in the hallway, the air felt lighter, not because everything had been solved, but because something had begun. As she passed each floor, more employees peeked out, eyes wide. Word traveled fast. Some looked curious. Some smiled. Some just stared, like they were witnessing a ghost they'd heard about but never seen. By the time she reached the lobby, a few employees from earlier had returned from lunch. Jared was standing off to the side, talking quietly with a co-worker. He caught sight of her and nodded respectfully, not with fear, not with shame, just understanding. She nodded back. The front desk team sat straighter now, not stiff, but alert, present, like they finally realized their position was more than checking IDs and logging names. It was the front line of the company's identity. She stepped outside into the bright afternoon sun. The city buzzed all around her. Horns, voices, life. And as she looked up at the towering glass building she built from scratch, she knew something had shifted, not just in policy, not just in systems, but in the people. And that's where real power begins. By the time she returned to the top floor, the boardroom was already full. 12 people, all of them in suits, all of them looking at her like they were trying to read her before she even sat down. Some were nervous. A few looked defensive, and a couple looked curious, waiting to see how this was going to play out. She didn't sit immediately. Instead, she walked to the far end of the room, where the wall was made entirely of glass. The view of the city skyline stretched wide. To them, it probably looked like she was gathering her thoughts. But she wasn't. She was choosing her next move carefully. She turned around and faced them, arms loose at her sides. You've all heard what happened this morning, she began, her voice steady, controlled. But I want to talk about what that moment revealed, not just about one employee, but about the foundation we built. One of the board members leaned forward slightly. Ms. Walker, with all due respect, this sounds like an isolated issue, a miscommunication. She didn't flinch. Was it? She asked calmly. Is that really what you believe? He hesitated. The room stayed quiet. You see, she continued, it's easy to call it a miscommunication when it doesn't happen to you. But when a founder of a bank is mistaken for a trespasser in her own building, it's not a simple misunderstanding. It's a symptom. Another board member, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes, folded her hands on the table. What exactly are you proposing we do? I'm not proposing, she said. I'm informing. That got their attention. We're launching a full audit on cultural practices and internal behavior. Not just HR files, but floor-level feedback, blind surveys, and direct interviews. We're evaluating every department on more than just performance. We're evaluating leadership on inclusion, transparency, and internal trust. A few eyebrows raised. One person started to speak, but she raised a hand slightly. There's more. Starting this quarter, every executive will be required to complete a full cultural leadership certification. External, not in-house. And before you ask, yes, including board members. No exceptions. Now the room was buzzing, people shifting in their chairs, some murmuring under their breath. She let it all happen, let them squirm for a moment. Then she walked over to the head of the table, pulled out her chair, and finally sat. I built this bank with my name, my investment, and my vision. And I'm not going to sit here and let that vision get buried under boardroom politeness. She locked eyes with the man who first called it a miscommunication. He looked down. Let's be honest, she continued. If I were a white man in a blue suit walking in this morning, nobody would have blinked. Nobody would have asked for ID. Nobody would have told me to wait outside. Silence. I'm not here for drama. I'm here for change. The kind that lasts. The kind that makes everyone in this building, no matter where they work, feel like they belong. She looked around the room slowly, one face at a time. This company started as an answer to exclusion, to being told, you don't belong here. If we've forgotten that, then we've lost our soul. The room was still. No one dared interrupt now. She opened the folder in front of her, slid a packet across the table. This is the new framework. Read it, sign it, live it. If anyone here feels it's too much, too fast, or too uncomfortable, then this may not be the right table for you anymore. No threats, no raised voice, just clarity, purpose, and power. One of the younger board members finally spoke up. It's not too much. It's the first time this place has felt honest. She gave a slow nod. Good. Then let's rebuild it the right way. No one clapped. No one smiled. But something deep shifted in that room. It wasn't just a policy update. It was the start of a new era. Later that evening, long after most employees had gone home, the building was quiet again. The lobby lights were dimmed. The echo of footsteps had faded. Elevators stood still. Even the air felt different, like something heavy had finally been lifted. She stood alone in her office, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, her fingers tracing over the grain of her desk. The skyline blinked outside her window, city lights flickering like restless thoughts. Her phone buzzed once, an email, then again a message from legal. But she didn't reach for it. Not yet. She was thinking about the kid from the lobby, about Terrence in customer service, about the HR woman who finally spoke the truth in a room full of hesitation. She thought about how long it had taken to get here, and how fast things could fall apart if no one paid attention. The truth was, she had come close to walking away before, not from the company, but from the fight. There were days when the pressure felt endless, where every room felt colder, every conversation sharper, where being the only one like her at the table got exhausting. And yet, she stayed. Not for pride, but because she knew what it meant to build something from nothing, to create a space where people could see themselves not just as workers, but as visionaries, leaders, decision-makers. A soft knock broke her thoughts. It was her assistant again, holding a folder and looking slightly unsure. Sorry to bother you, but I thought you want to see this tonight. She took the folder and opened it. Inside was a printout of the employee feedback portal, anonymous submissions from every department, responding to a message she had delivered earlier that day. She read the first few lines. Asterisk, I never felt like anyone above the third floor even knew our names. Today, that changed. Asterisk, asterisk, it was the first time I believed our voices actually mattered here. Asterisk, asterisk, I hope this isn't just a moment. I hope it's a movement. Asterisk, page after page. Honest, raw, emotional, some grateful, some angry, some just relieved. She could feel the weight of every word, not just because it was directed at her, but because it proved what she had suspected all along. The people inside these walls had been waiting for permission to be honest, waiting for a leader who wouldn't just hear them, but see them. She looked up from the folder. The assistant was still standing there, unsure whether to leave or stay. You've been quiet today, she said. The assistant blinked. I didn't want to say the wrong thing. There is no wrong thing, she said. Just say the real thing. A pause. Then quietly, I've worked under 3 COs before you. None of them ever came down to our floor. None of them ever asked what I thought. You're the only one who's made me feel like I belong here. She gave a soft nod. No smile, just understanding. Tomorrow, I want to meet with every assistant in this building, from every department, one by one. Her assistant's eyes widened. All of them. Yes, every single one. Why? She looked down at the feedback sheet, then back at the door. Because the people who keep this place running are the ones who get ignored the most. And I'm not building a company where silence becomes normal. The assistant nodded and stepped out quietly. She sat again, eyes scanning the city. It was strange how the quiet moments always told the most truth. Not the meetings, not the speeches, but the stillness after. Outside, the wind pushed softly against the windows. Inside, the pulse of something new was just beginning to beat. Not a revolution, not a riot. Something quieter, something steadier. Respect, responsibility, rebuilding. And in that quiet, she reached for her pen, opened her notebook, and began writing again. Not a speech, not a memo, a blueprint for what this place could truly become.